Aging like a fine wine in the fantasy hockey game is an angle that you want to consider to build a winner. We'll talk about some veteran studs and some fades on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, my fantasy fanatics? Welcome back inside the lab to the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season, it is right around the corner, my friends. Visit FanDuel.com today or the FanDuel app and start placing your futures wagers right now. Right now, before I get into what I think should be an intriguing solo episode for you guys out there listening, doing your advanced fantasy draft preparation, we're looking at veteran players, and I'm going to do something that I've actually never done on this show, and doing it solo. I hope you guys are holding me down here. It might be a little rocky, but I'm going to take a look at a whole bunch of veteran players, big-name veteran players, and I'm going to do a little breakdown of what I think they will do this season, where they're at, and a draft or pass, whether I draft him or I'm passing on him this season, and there's going to be some polarizing takes. I can't wait for your comments. Drop them into the feedback on the YouTube channel. Smash that subscribe button. You guys know the drill left and right. Before I start, shout out to my boy Steele Roden, my co-host, my brother, one of my best friends, one of the best people I know. He's on his road to recovery. He's on the IR right now. He's a little bit banged up after a fender bender. So show the boy some love in the comments as well. Steele, we got you, brother. I got you. I hope you're feeling better real soon. He will be back, my friends, but you're going to have to deal with me over the next little while, and I hope that's okay too. Because on today's show, when I look at building out a good fantasy hockey team, at the end of drafts or even in the middle at the start of drafts, sometimes GMs can get caught up in the hype of a big name. Usually that comes with a veteran presence that has their fantasy value waning. I'm going to talk about a bunch of big names on today's episode. Some of these takes might be obvious, but look, our show is for everybody. I want to help the experts get a leg up. I want to help the beginners get their feet wet. And I want to help the everydayers also make sure that they're building a winner. Malkin, Crosby, Ovi, Burns, and Gibson. These are some of the oldest players in the NHL today. And knowing what to do with veteran players at the end of drafts or getting away from a big name to get some value on your team are angles that you need to know. So I want to talk about these players, starting with Evgeni Malkin. And it will be tough for me to talk about Malkin in a negative light and then talk about Sidney Crosby in a positive light from the perspective of what I think this Pittsburgh Penguins team is going to do next season. Because let's be honest, 7th in the Metropolitan last season with 80 points. They finished with a goal differential of -50. That's the third worst in the entire Eastern Conference. Actually, I believe that was tied for the second worst. Anyway, it's bad. And when I look at the makeup of this roster, there is not exactly a ton to get excited about with the Pittsburgh Penguins, even though I will throw this out, which was an interesting little outlier. This team did finish with the 6th best power play last year, but the top 6 forward group of Anthony Mantha, Ricard Raquel, Brian Rust, Evgeni Malkin, and then, of course, Sid, who we will get to in a minute, there is not a ton to be excited about there. When you look at Evgeni Malkin, too, the regression over the last couple of years, this is a name that obviously brings a lot of attractive attention. Last year, he also started the season red hot. He ended up finishing with 50 points, 16 goals, 34 assists, but the numbers are down across the board, and that has been now a couple of years in a row. Minutes on ice, shots on net, only 125 shots on net last year for Gino. And some people out there might look and say, hey, he started hot, he got banged up. Maybe there is still an angle here where he pops 60, 70 points. I don't see it. 50 points is right around the realm of where I see Evgeni Malkin. I don't love what's going on in Pittsburgh, basically at all, aside from Sidney Crosby, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. But longtime listeners of the show know how I feel about Sid. But when it comes to a guy who is now going to be 39 years old and Evgeni Malkin, And I would understand that there is some sexiness in the name. And given his hot start last year, like I said, you might want to consider drafting him. This is a pass for me heavy. Do not think about drafting this player unless perhaps this is in a really, really deep league and this lands into your lap at perhaps, like I'm telling you guys, your last forward that you throw in there and hope that some sort of magic happens with this Pittsburgh Penguins team. Overall, though, you look at their numbers too in terms of offensive output, as much as the power play was kind of sexy at times, which is intriguing. Basically, Sidney Crosby doing all of that work. The Pittsburgh Penguins finished 18th in the NHL last year in terms of goals for with 242. This is a very average club up and down the lineup. So the real angle here is buyer beware with any single player on this team aside from Sidney Crosby. So it's a pass for me heavy with Malkin. That might be obvious, and some of these might be obvious, but I'm going to just lay it down for you guys plain and simple. When I look at Sidney Crosby, however, this is a player also who has a lot to play for this upcoming season in terms of killing it for Team Canada at the Olympics in Italy. We know he's been on the ice a ton in the offseason. Captain Canada, Sid the Kid, all of the names you want to put on this guy, fire me up. 91 points last year, 31 penalty minutes too. Still bringing some peripheral love with 67 hits. Yeah, that minus 20 number is ugly. But when you also understand that how bad this Pittsburgh team is, that's one of the things that you might have to chalk up with getting the value that you still get with Sid. How about in those random rare leagues with face-off percentage, still winning face-offs at a 57% clip? Sidney Crosby is not a generational player. He's a Mount Rushmore type player in the NHL for the game of hockey. He's special. Not taken away from Evgeni Malkin, but he is not in the realm of Sidney Crosby. And that's why a guy on the same team, a guy very similar in age, with very similar amount of games played for the most part on the body. I'll just check that. 1,200 for Gino, 1,300 and change for Sid. You know what I'm getting at here? I'm drafting. This isn't a pass. Sidney Crosby's been on my keeper team for a number of years in a row. As much as I don't see it for Pittsburgh this year, and when I've looked at Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoffs ranking, I look at the NHL.com's fantasy rankings as well. Sidney Crosby slides in at around the 17th, 18th overall mark. I don't see him being around much past the second round. He will be drafted, and that's where exactly I'd be comfortable drafting him. He's that good, guys. He's not going to fade out this season. I will talk about another player that I'm a little bit more wary of. It's going to be a bold take. I can't wait for the heat. I'll be talking about Alex Ovechkin. I'm going to talk a little bit about Brent Burns, John Gibson, the Red Wings, the Carolina Hurricanes as well. Make sure you guys keep it tapped to the channel. I'll be here for a few more solo episodes to get you guys in full gear. For September, Mock Draft Mondays will continue to roll, positional breakdowns, everything that you guys need to know to build a winner, and making sure that you have that money in the pocketbook, as we like to say. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Gametime. Check out the Gametime app. Download it today. Head to a ball game with friends or family. Make it a game day. You don't want to realize you'll be out in the stands. That's when Gametime comes in clutch. The easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on the tickets, you're splurging on food, drinks, merch, or even a bigger group to come with you. Gametime will make it possible. They make buying tickets fast, easy, simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they get incredible last-minute deals for everyone with clear seat views, lowest price guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, that's guaranteed with our friends at Gametime. Much love once again, my friends, for joining me for this solo episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Drop that feedback for us. 5-star review. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We will be kicking up our listener leagues once again. Make sure if you're interested, we'll put out the feelers. Tap in. We'll have a casual league. We'll have a competitive league. The difference is entry fees. So much interest last year. If you're interested, drop us some info in the comments. We are here to make sure you guys build a winner. That's it. Trying to share angles and insight to put you in a position to dominate drafts. And when I look at a player like Alex Ovechkin, and here comes the heat, okay, you guys? Here comes the heat, because when I look at his numbers, yeah, 44 goals last year was special in 65 games, no doubt. Coming up from 31 the year before, even better. And I'm going to get that people are excited about what's going on here. His peripheral value has been declining. Shots down year over the last 3 seasons. Hits basically the same over the last 3 seasons. Penalty minutes, same story. This is my take on Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals from last season. They overachieved. This is a good team, no doubt. Alex Ovechkin is one of the best of all time and the greatest goal scorer. This isn't me coming on here trying to clickbait, trying to get anyone fired up. This is my honest opinion, and if you disagree, that's fine. They overachieved last year. The goal chase was really special. They had Wayne Gretzky in the seats for a whole bunch of your games. That's going to fire up a guy even playing 9-10 minutes on the fourth line. That's going to fire up the backup goalie not playing any minutes. It was a really special, historically cool thing. He's got it done. They fell short in the postseason. I think you saw a lot of really good kind of step out seasons. Protas, Jacob Chikrin, you could go Connor McMichael. Are all of those things going to, a renaissance year from Pierre-Luc Dubois? Are all of these things going to happen? And then you have a mostly unproven goaltender in Logan Thompson. Is that going to happen again? And when I look at those numbers with Alex Ovechkin, and I'm not saying he's undraftable. For me, it's a pass. And, tell me I'm wrong. Explain to me. I know how good he is in all of that. But when you look at other players that are projected to go around, where I think Alex Ovechkin should go, and you're talking Willie Nylander, Jack Hughes, Mitch Marner, Braden Point, even a player like Sidney Crosby, I know for me, I'm going to take all of those other names. That's me personally based on what I expect this year, because I need to see it from this Washington Capitals group. They brought in a lot of new faces, and yes, it worked for a season. They still fell short. I guess what I'm trying to say is, me personally, I'm not going to buy into reaching on Alex Ovechkin. Is he still draftable, valuable, and very fantasy relevant? Of course. But considering where he's projected to go, me personally, I'm going to take other players. So, I said it's a pass for me on Malkin. He's not draftable. That's easy. That's a very kind of obvious take, but I just wanted to throw his name in. Saying draft Crosby, again, sure. Very obvious. This is a bold take, but I think it holds true and makes sense. I'm going to pass on him for some other players at that spot. If you're in the kind of mid to late second round, I'm going to pass on Alex Ovechkin. However, if I'm later in the third and he's still there, yes, I'm drafting him. But for the sake of the conversations that I'm having today and the angle that I wanted to cover with the Washington Capitals specifically, that's how I feel about it. Looking at the numbers of this Washington Capitals team, yeah, they had a good year. Second in the NHL with goals for, 286. Only the Tampa Bay Lightning scored more goals overall. Then you kind of dig into their underlying numbers, though. 14th best on the power play at only 23%. That's kind of ho-hum. Washington Capitals on the penalty kill, that was a huge difference maker. They were 5th in the NHL. Let me spit it out plain and simple. My prediction, when you also look at how good that Metropolitan Division is, a reloaded Carolina Hurricanes team should be a healthy and confident New Jersey Devils team, a Columbus Blue Jackets team on the rise, a New York Rangers club that is going to be better and much more focused with all the off-ice Chris Drury incited madness off the table this season. I just think the Washington Capitals will be in tough to repeat, to run the table in the East once again. 111 points ain't happening again. So that means all of these crazy good years for players, including Alex Ovechkin, I don't personally see it. If I'm crazy, guys, hit me in the comments and let me know, but that's my take on that. 2 more players before we round out today's episode. Stay tuned. I'll be back. I'm going to be taking a few more angles that you want to know before the draft happens. Some players that I think have overachieved last year that might underachieve, some high risk, high rewards. I'm going to take a look at goalies. I'm going to shift to the blue line. Brent Burns, again, this might be a more obvious take after 29 points last season in 82 games. You're staying away from Brent Burns heavily this season. I don't see him as a draftable player. If there is anybody out there thinking that because of the name that you might still take him, no, you do not touch Brent Burns this upcoming year. Look, even on the Colorado Avalanche instead of the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't see a ton of value in this player. He might catch a little bit of power play 2 time. Ross Colton, Brock Nelson, Valerie Nichushkin. I don't see it. So this is the classic case of if you were considering a player like Sam Burns as one of your last blue liners, take a look at some other younger options that could be out there at that time of the draft. I don't exactly have a ton of names popping into my mind right now. However, the main angle is here with a player who's now gone 1,500 games in the NHL. He's been playing in the show since 2003 at 18 years old. He has been mostly durable in his career. He has played 82 games in 4 straight seasons. Last year, still 98 block shots, 29 points, 28 penalty minutes, 174 shots on net. Yes, in some really deep formats, there is still some value you could squeak out there. But unless you are in an absolute juggernaut of a league, 14, 16 teams, I really don't want to touch a 40-year-old Brent Burns on a Colorado Avalanche team that he is probably on that third pairing with, even with the power play time. I'm staying away. This is also a player that who has logged so much minutes in his career. It's a risky situation for me, even though that he has played 82 games a year. It's the minutes. The minutes are going to decrease once again. So stay away from him. Trying to keep it simple for you guys. Brent Burns, he's a name. He still has a little bit of value. I'm staying away. I'm not going to stay away from talking about one more player. I went the forwards for you off the top. Little D love. I'm going to go with a veteran goaltender that I want to talk about that I think is going to bring some attractive fantasy value for the upcoming season. We're going to get after it. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. August 26th is FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans for live bold predictions and preseason hunches. For 24 hours only, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1, you know this is the moment. Is it time for the Bills? We're going to be sprinkling some money on it. AJ thinks the same. Shout out to the cat in the back. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets right now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. That's with our friends at FanDuel. Play your game. Giddy up, my fantasy fanatics. We always try and get you guys in and out in 30 minutes. We want to keep it short, sweet, and succinct. Put a little info in your back pocket so you head to the draft table a leg up on the competition. I don't know what everyone else out there thinks about the Detroit Red Wings for this upcoming season. I mentioned the tightening Metropolitan. I look at the East or the Atlantic in a very similar angle. The Montreal Canadiens are a really good young team on the rise. The Ottawa Senators are looking to take a next step. The Florida Panthers could very much three-peat. The Tampa Bay Lightning are solid, and although the Toronto Maple Leafs lost Mitch Marner, and we know the song and dance story around them, they're going to be a top 3 club in this division. So where do the Detroit Red Wings fit in? But I talked a little bit about Makro Kasper the other day. I talked about the makeup of this top 6 forward group and how much I'm intrigued by Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond taking a massive step forward. And Alex DeBrincat, you got Mo Sider on the back end. And then you factor in John Gibson, a name who has been thrown out there seemingly for years in terms of being a player on the move. He finally finds a new club for the first time in his 12-year NHL career. And I don't think there's anyone talking about this veteran presence. And again, I'm talking about aging veterans that still bring fantasy value, but a draft or pass angle. Because I know there's going to still be people out there that might look at Evgeni Malkin as a week-to-week flyer or as perhaps their last player in their draft. I know there's going to be guys and gals taking Alexander Ovechkin, 3rd round, late 2nd round, 4th round in some leagues. Sure. Brent Burns, stay away. But John Gibson is a goaltender that I think deserves some credit here for what he's been able to do on a really bad team. He finally gets that change of scenery that it seems like he's wanted for a while. He's a Northeast American boy from Pittsburgh. I think he's going to fit well into the Detroit system, and I think he's going to get a lion's share of the starts. Steele might disagree with me considering how much he loves Cam Talbot, but they brought this goaltender in for a reason, and I think considering he was really good last year. Let's not forget. 11-11 doesn't jump off the page, but a 911 save percentage and a 2.77 goals against really should jump off the page. He has proven that he can be a number one goaltender. Will he return to that? No, but he's the prototypical 0G, be patient. Shout out to the boys at Apples and Ginos. Be patient and take your shot on John Gibson. If it doesn't work out, you swap him out. You're not relying him to carry your goaltending roster. You're not taking him as your number one goaltender. But I would be fine with perhaps slotting him in and really waiting and building out the rest of my roster and putting him in as my number 2 or even a security blanket number 3 option in the blue paint. That's how I look at him. He came in at number 200, final slot on NHL.com's 200 top 200 fantasy player ranking. For Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff, he did a top 300 fantasy ranking. I believe he threw him in there at something like 175, 122. And like Matt Larkin said, I hope I didn't say Dylan Larkin. I meant Matt Larkin. You guys know what it is. Gibson's a very respectable mid-range number 2 goalie. And that's why I had to come on here. He's the youngest of this bunch. He'll be 33 this year. We got a couple of other dinos in here. I can say it, everybody. I'm in my late 30s as well. You got to know what to do with these players. Like I've said throughout the episode and off the top, don't let a name distract you from perhaps another piece out there, but also don't let someone who has been around a while look like they don't still hold value, if that makes any sense. I hope today's episode has made a whole lot of sense. Crosby, it's a draft. Ovi, it's a slight pass with an asterisk. Burns, hard pass. Gino, pass. John Gibson, I'm going to be drafting him if I can. As I mentioned, prototypical second or third spot goaltender. Thank you so much for joining me for the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'll be back in a few days. We'll be off for a couple of days. I'll be up north taking care of the family, but we'll be back with another Mock Draft Monday episode coming in red hot. So you guys are tuned in for the upcoming season. You made us your first listen. Make sure you make your second listen. Locked On NHL. The Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. They bring you daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast. Thanks again for joining me, my friends. Good luck tonight. Good luck with all your bets. And I'll see you back here again later in the week.